All right, it's the end of the week, and that means it's the best day of the week. It's Friday, and you know what that means here on the Morning Pit. It means it's time for the Morning Pit Mailbag on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's my favorite thing to do all week, every week, I should say. I look forward to doing it all week because it means it's Friday and we're all kind of heading into the weekend. Hopefully you look forward to it and enjoy it as well. We got some great questions this week from the Pitt fans on Panther-Lair.com. A lot of them relating to NIL, roster construction, and obviously a lot of football and basketball stuff. We already got a lot of great questions coming in. Let's dive into it. We don't need to waste any time here. It's the Morning Pitt Mailbag on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Friday, and here on the Morning Pit, you know what we do. It's the Morning Pit Mailbag, where we take questions from readers and Pitt fans at Panther-Lair.com. We put up a post usually on Tuesday. Pitt fans start chiming in there on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board, posting questions all throughout the week, and then we answer as many as we can here in the Mailbag episode of the Morning Pit on Friday. I always look forward to doing it. Like I always say, I feel like I say this every week, but I just want to express my appreciation every week because I really do appreciate it. You know, every day I got to think of things to talk about here on the Morning Pit, but I get one day, Fridays, which is, the best day for it, where I let you guys choose the topics. You have something on your mind, you have a topic or a conversation you want to have, you post it, and then we talk about it here. So I really enjoy that. I like getting, you guys to chime in on it, and I think it's always a lot of fun. So I appreciate all the questions. Listen, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content, whether it's football, basketball, recruiting. We talk about everything. I'm mixing up the two taglines again. I always do that. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is where we have Pitt video content every day of the week. Monday through Friday, we have Morning Pit episodes. We have the Wednesday night live show that we always do. We have our, we have press conferences and post-game show, all kinds of things. It's all right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So if you're looking for Pitt video content, this is the place to get it, and you want to make sure you don't miss anything we do. So like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, to get all of the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle, and message boards where you can hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, let's jump into some of these comments and questions here. We got some good ones this week I'm looking forward to answering. Pitt NBA starts us off. Despite missing on Rocco Spindler, my impression is that Pitt football is much more competitive in NIL than they were last year. They retained the core talent on the current roster and landed a number of Power 4 transfers with some pedigree and or production at the Power 4 level and beat out other Power 4 schools for a number of the non-P4 transfers. Even that they were in on Spindler leads me to believe they have room to spend for players they want. Is this a fair impression? I think it is. I do think it is. I think Pitt was far more competitive on the NIL front. And I think it extends, like you said, it's from the players they retained. It's the players that they went out and brought in. I think the retention part is probably, I can't say we don't talk about it enough because I think we talk about it a lot. I bring it up a lot. We talk about it a lot on the message boards. I know Jim tries to mention it as often as he can on the podcast. We all try to bring it up a lot. And the people I talk to at Pitt and around the collective and everything, I think they feel a certain amount of pride because they've been able to hold on to basically everyone. I mean, outside of like Sincere Edwards, was the biggest one that they didn't want to lose, who did leave. And then Rylan Gandy being a starter, I think they would have liked to have had him back as a returning starter. I mean, you always want returning starters if you can. But I think they feel good about the DBs they have lined up to play there. You compare it to last year where, they lost some guys they wanted to hold on to. They wanted to hold on to DeAndre Jules. They wanted to hold on to Deion Hayes and Solomon DeShields. I think those were some of the biggest, names that they lost. And even in those cases, those were unique situations. Guys came back for a raise basically. And, after getting a raise and, there was a certain point where you had to cut that off. But I think the effort made to keep some guys who I think would have commanded a pretty lofty amount on the open market. Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, Kyle Lewis, Rasheem Biles, those four in particular, Kenny Johnson, 5. I think when you put, that's an impressive group to keep together. Oh, and Francis Brew and Jasir Winnington, some of those young D linemen other than Sincere Edwards, who was really the one that got away. I do think Pitt was more competitive. I think they do have more resources available. I think they have I think they had quite a bit more resources available this offseason than what they had available last year. I think Pitt's, the university's support of those efforts, the athletic department's support of those efforts went a long way. And, I think fans were more aware and more fans donated. Still not as much as as they probably needed or would have wanted to have. But that's always going to be the case. There's never an amount that you say, okay, now we don't need any more. It's like coaches and facilities upgrades. They're always going to want something else. They're always going to want a fancier locker room or a fancier this or bigger that. It's always, nothing's ever enough. But they got a lot. They had a lot to work with, and they made the most of it, I think, this offseason. Richard A. asks, Chris, do you know if the buyouts of Narduzzi and Capel are paid in one lump sum, or is it paid over time? If buyouts are over time, wouldn't it be better, especially with Capel, to buy him out at the end of the year and move on? Right now, I don't see cutting ties with Narduzzi at this time. I'm not sure how those buyouts usually work. I think they are. I think they're lump sum, but I really can't say that definitively. Maybe sometimes there are settlements where you pay it out either all at once or over time. Like whatever it is, this is the thing, okay? And I keep saying this, and I've said things like this, and I have said things along this line. I said it a couple years ago. Not sure why the dog is barking in the background. I think maybe you heard me bump my table and thinks it's someone knocking at the door, but it's not. There's nobody here. Look, it just doesn't make sense. I know you're disappointed about losing the Virginia game. I know you're disappointed about 6-game losing streak to end the season and the Toledo game. I know all of these things are very disappointing. And if they miss the NCAA tournament again, that'll be incredibly disappointing. To miss it 2 out of the last 3 years. I don't even say 6 out of the last 7 years, 2 out of the last 3. Just because those were the years where really I think they had a chance and they fell short. They were unable to maximize the opportunity. But even then, I just don't think you can justify the amount. I just don't. There are too many things to spend money on right now. That paying somebody to go away, if it's me and it's my money that's getting spent, like that's low on my priority list. There are other things to put that money in. You need to come up with $20.5 million in revenue sharing. Like money that you're not bringing in extra money to make up for that. You're paying that money out. And then I think they're all kicking into a kitty that's going to pay, all the schools are kicking in to pay, previous student athletes. And then you're going to have all these extra scholarships. There's a lot more money. And then NIL. Schools are going to be involved in NIL, and money is going to be filtered through NIL from the schools to the players. You have to find a way to pay those things. And all of those things, bringing in good players is more important than paying the coach to go away. All right? Give me Jeff Capel with a highly compensated roster, even more highly compensated than this one, and I bet they'll have success. Give me Pat Narduzzi with a highly compensated roster, and I bet he'll find a way to have success. I would much rather spend the money on the players than spend the money to make a coach go away, in addition to the money you'd have to spend to hire a new coach. Coaches are important. Coaching is important. You want to have good coaches. You need good coaches. But you need the players. And all this other money we're talking about is the money that will be spent to acquire the players and bring in the talent. You need that money for the players. You need the players if you're going to win the games. That's what it comes down to. And so I would not pay a buyout. Not right now. Probably not for a couple years. Rather take my chances getting good talent and getting in the best roster you can buy than starting over with a new coach who's going to, the whole process of changing coaches is going to take up a big chunk of the money that could be going to bringing in players. B1235C says, any truth to Randy Bates going to Ohio State? No, there's not. That question was asked on Tuesday. By Friday, obviously I'm recording this on Thursday, we know that Randy Bates is not going to be the guy. Ohio State's got some kind of plan lined up. Looked like there might be a possibility for a little bit, but I never really heard anything concrete or credible that Bates was going to get that Ohio State job. And quite frankly, it never really made a lot of sense to me. I like Randy Bates. Think he's pretty good at his job. But for a lot of reasons, it just didn't make sense that he would be the guy Ohio State would target. I could be wrong, but it just didn't stand out to me. Val Pitt wants to know, for the football season to be successful, who is the most important player on offense besides Eli Holstein and on defense? So I would say this, okay? And I don't have two names for you because I think it could be a variety of players who do these things, but more so it is the positions. It's the left tackle and it's a defensive end. Because if you get really good play out of your left tackle, if you get all conference level play out of your left tackle and all conference level play out of a defensive end, you're going to win 9 or 10 games. I really believe that. That's ultimately what it comes down to. If you want a player on offense and defense, whoever your left tackle is and whoever your most productive defensive end is. Because if you get those guys going, I think they're going to win a bunch of games. I think they'll be pretty good. If you can get those guys going, if you can get the left tackle going, and you can get the a pass rusher who's productive and can really, press the pocket, put pressure on the quarterback, impact the offense in that way. Those are the two, and if they do, it'll be a successful season. SV Pig 1 says, if you were Pat Narduzzi and could only get one more player for the roster in the spring portal at the Rocco Spindler price limit, what position would you spend $600,000 on? Well, not to repeat myself, but an offensive tackle and a defensive end. I think they've made a pretty good set of additions along the offensive line, bringing in 2 tackles and Kendall Stanley and Jeff Percy and 1 guard and Keith Gouvier. They brought in a handful of defensive ends. I think Brandon Moore, the kid from Oregon, I think has a chance to be really good. But those are the 2 positions where from the very start you needed to upgrade through the portal on the offensive line and a defensive end. That was, they used, how many did they bring in? 5, 6 transfers at those 2 spots. I mean, between the entire offensive line and the defensive end position. And that's where if they're going to upgrade or bring in another player, that would be the place to do it. Failing, and I know you might be like, wow, if you could spend $500,000 on a wide receiver, you could really be a game breaker, or a running back, or a corner or something. I mean, sure, fine, but you really want to make an impact on this roster. You really want to make this roster better and give them a chance to succeed where they failed last year. It's with the offensive line and the defensive ends, and so those are the most important positions for next season. And those are the positions that if you're going to upgrade and add one more transfer, that's the spot you want to do it. Or those are the spots where you want to do it. Hail to Knowledge says, what's your best guess on why the basketball team seems to be unmotivated to win? Do they have competitive drive or fire? Does the team need to work on strength and conditioning? They always seem to be much smaller than the competition. I can't really compare the size, so I don't have much to say about that. And I don't know about their conditioning. I don't know if they've gotten tired at the end of games, if that's an issue. I think they've had times where they look fired up and motivated and inspired and all of that. And they've had times where, look, the Virginia game, they got punched in the mouth and they didn't have a response. Jeff Capel said it. He said guys started hanging their heads and bad body language and all of that. They got punched in the mouth, and they did not have a response. I think, as sad as it is to say, 20-plus games into the season with veteran players on this team, I think they overlooked Virginia. I think they had a tough loss at Wake Forest, and they have Carolina coming up on the road on Saturday, and they thought, well, we'll be fine. We'll beat Virginia, and then we'll see what we can do against UNC. And I think they overlooked them. I don't think they took them seriously. I don't think they saw them as a real threat offensively. I think they thought they would be able to just get away with, half defending. And that turned out to not be the case. And when they realized it wasn't the case, rather than responding, rather than, actually, answering it and gearing up and actually playing hard, it went the other way. They got down about it. And Virginia, as Jeff Capel said, picked up on that. They sensed that Pitt was getting down. They sensed that Pitt was not going to have an answer or response, and they fed off of it. I mean, Jeff Capel said that was part of the reason Day-Day Ames went off, because Capel could tell that Day-Day Ames could sense that Pitt was just hanging their heads. That Pitt was down and not going to find a good response to how Virginia had been attacking. And so the outcome was he took advantage of it. Ames took advantage of it. And Virginia took advantage of it. And Pitt never really had a way to come back. I don't think it's like a team-wide issue. I don't think it's been a season-wide issue. I think this team has shown plenty of fight and plenty of firepower and plenty of grit and all those different things that we want to say. But on that particular night, on Monday night, they didn't have it, and they weren't really able to summon it up. Now, that's what makes this game on Saturday so interesting and so important and so crucial. They need to have had, they were off practice on Tuesday, and then they practiced Wednesday, yesterday, and today. I think they practiced today. I know they practiced at least Wednesday and yesterday. Like, those needed to be two of the most fiery, inspired, active practices Pitt has had all season. And you would like to think that'll be the response to the game. You didn't have a response in the game, but maybe 24 hours, 48 hours after that game on Monday night, maybe the players could come out with a little bit of fire and show it in practice and then carry it over to the game at Chapel Hill. A little more focus, a little more energy, a little more intensity, a little more force. Jeff Capel always likes to talk about playing with force. They need to come out and be on top of North Carolina from the start on Saturday. And I don't know if they're going to. I don't know what that game is going to look like. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I'll probably predict Pitt to win. And if they lose, that might be the last time I predict Pitt to win this season in our staff picks at Panther-Lair.com. But they need to look, to use your phrase, they need to look motivated to win tomorrow. What's next here? Monwin 2015. Chris, are you disappointed or encouraged in what Pitt football has done this offseason? Yeah, pretty encouraged, I think. Again, they needed to address the offensive line and the defensive ends, and I think they did that. They got a bunch of guys to fill in there. They added a handful of options at wide receiver, who I think will be interesting to watch and see how those guys develop, see if they can get into the rotation. But they addressed their needs with the offensive line and defensive end. Before they got Jeff Percy, when they only had 2 offensive linemen committed as transfers, I was kind of disappointed with it. I didn't think they were getting what they needed. I didn't think they had enough offensive linemen. Once they added Percy, not necessarily that I think Percy's going to be an all-ACC offensive lineman, but just the quantity and bringing in guys with experience, guys who have played, guys from successful programs. Jeff Percy was part of a national championship. Bringing in guys like that, I think, boosts the group. I talked about it yesterday, right? That by my count, they'll have 107 combined career starts on the offensive line going into this season. That's huge. They had 37 last year, and now they have 107. You got more experienced. You brought in talented players, experienced players, and it should help make them better. So I think they did pretty well. Missed on some options, made some curious decisions about some of the guys they pursued and didn't pursue. But ultimately, I think they got the kind of haul they needed to get. And we'll see if these guys can play, but they mostly got the kind of haul they needed to get. Smenges says quarterbacks in 2025 ACC is a healthy Eli Holstein throwing behind a healthier, deeper offensive line, a legitimate all-ACC candidate along with Cade Klubnik. Yeah, I think I think Eli should be a legitimate all-ACC candidate. Look, a big part of what's going to determine the success in 2025, there's 2 elements that it's ultimately going to come down to, I think. All right, 1, does Eli Holstein stay healthy? 2, does Eli Holstein make a big improvement from his redshirt freshman to redshirt sophomore year? From a first-year starter to a second-year starter, where he goes through all of spring camp as the number 1 guy in his second year in the offense, when he goes through all of training camp as the number 1 guy in his second year in the offense, and he enters the season as the number 1 guy in his second year in the offense. If he stays healthy and he's made the kind of progression and development you would expect year 1 to year 2, then yeah, I think he's capable. He's got the talent, the inherent talent to play at that level, to be an all-ACC caliber player. But he's got to stay healthy, and he needs to just have a natural progression. It doesn't need to anything crazy to happen. I think he was really good last year. He was going to be the ACC Rookie of the Year if he hadn't gotten hurt, I think. But if he stays healthy and he gets better and builds on that talent, absolutely he can be an all-ACC guy, for sure. RJP8769 says, in your opinion, is this basketball team worthy of getting into the NCAA tournament? Deserve's got nothing to do with it, right? Like, if you build the resume, then you're worthy. And right now, they still have a resume that makes them right on the borderline of being worthy. So for now, yeah, they are worthy. And they've got 9 more opportunities to prove their worth. Like, they're on the cusp right now. Like, they are very much dangling off the cliff. And, to go back to our cliff metaphor that we've been using since last week, they're dangling on the cliff, but they haven't fallen off of it yet. And so there's 9 more games here that they have a chance to go out and prove their worthiness and build that resume and make it solid. I think there's a non-zero chance that by the time we get to the ACC tournament, Pitt is firmly in the NCAA tournament. It may not be a majority chance. It may not be like 75% chance. It might be a 10% chance, but it's a non-zero chance. Like, that path still exists. And I still believe in the talent of this team to be able to get there. So, are they worthy of an NCAA tournament? Yeah, I think so. Just barely right now, but I think so. And I think they've got a lot of opportunities coming up where they can further cement that worthiness. All right, we got to get one more, and then I got to get out of here. H2PJC says, after enrolling for the semester and before spring ball starts, what are the players' coaches doing? What does a day in the life of a Pitt football player, staffer in early February look like? The coaches go on the road recruiting. I think they're done with that now. So they're game planning, breaking down film, not necessarily game planning, but I mean, they are looking ahead and scouting and, scouting their own team, scouting the other teams and all those kinds of things in addition to recruiting. And the players are working out, like strength and conditioning. So, they're going to class, school. It's still part of college athletics. School. It's what we're here for. Yeah, thumbs up. So they're going to class, and they're working out. They're in the strength and conditioning program. The fourth quarter Fridays or whatever it is that they call it, where they get up at 6 a.m. and run really hard and probably puke and build character or whatever the coaches like to call it. So they're focused largely on strength and conditioning. They're probably working together. Going over stuff with the coaches, probably some film sessions, and also working together, running things in the indoor at night, Eli throwing all the receivers and that kind of stuff. All those stories we hear about, we hear more of when they're actually playing well, less of when they're not. But that's, a day in the life. I don't have the hour by hour breakdown, but I think that's generally what it is. They go to school and they do football. And that's probably the bulk of it. They probably have a social life, but they go to school and they do football things, whether it's lifting, running, film, or throwing with each other and going over things, doing little player-led walkthroughs, which you can do at this time of year. So, school and football, that's what it is. All right, we're out of time. We got to run here. I think we had 1 or 2 questions left over. We will get those in next week. But thanks everybody who submitted questions for this week's mailbag. It's a lot of fun as always. I appreciate you guys contributing. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. On Monday, we'll have a lot to talk about with this Pitt, North Carolina game, I am sure. So make sure you tune in for that one. All right, I hope you had a great week. Thanks for watching these videos all week. Make sure you like and subscribe. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Pitt, Carolina. We'll catch up with you on Monday for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.